Meredith, would you like a piece?
No, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, but thank you for the offer.
Oh, you're welcome. Easy Greek pizza.
All right, you have to plan holiday spirit, like dinner drinks. Because I'm crabby, you're crabby. I'm just along for the ride. I know you might be crabby, but I don't want you to
Christmas is
be
gonna have
crabby.
an eclipse this year by everything that's going on, that's for sure.
Yes, I have 4 ornaments on the tree, tons of boxes. One of these planets, I'm gonna put it all together. I've never been so late in my entire life.
I don't need to, I just did the Christmas card ordering. Nobody's online yet, right, Rob?
Somebody was trying to sign in. Kevin's gonna join that way, but otherwise than that, not, let's see.
No, we can't have any people planning today. I'm gonna eat and drink. Betty,
Do I need to do anything here?
what is that?
Bill can like you around my house.
More so than usual.
No.
Probably don't.
I really haven't seen this in a very long time, that's why I'm like, what?
Well, I've never seen them right. No, nothing funny, it just was very unusual.
Oh, because there was a, what was there, like a month?
I think so, yeah. I think that's it.
Where do I make you host again under participants, right? You, he's on there, so it must be the right one then.
What's Benny doing? What's Benny ever do?
March.
Oh, my.
March.
I'm not so much, maybe it's that we on the show.
No,
There's two on my team.
oh, wow.
Only one on the phone.
Good combination.
It is.
Okay.
Which order from?
Seaside. It's garlic and, tomato. Good
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a good combo.
I think, to be honest with you, the Excel sheet, we don't have to put on the screen, that I've got that PowerPoint. Of course, the people in the audience don't have the PowerPoint, but we're
To
gonna,
not be
it's
online today.
smaller bullets and I can talk them through it.
Not in
But
public.
you're
but
still
you
not
can't
logged
do
on.
that.
If you're truly interested, come on down.
Chris would have sent it out. She sent the link out. If you find Chris's email, you should find it.
Thank you so much.
So it's
For
Kevin.
signing.
Is he on?
Yeah.
Been last,
Today.
end of last week.
It's in color.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Am I coming on?
I hear you.
All right. Huh. Oh, good. And I'm also the host. Why did I come out? We got two town halls. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have no idea. We'll just leave it like this. I have no idea.
Yeah. It works
Yeah.
out.
All right. And you could screen share, right, or
Yeah.
not? Would that show to like Patty too, if we needed to?
Yeah, you can get off the phone, but yeah, Maddie can see it.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, sharing is not turned on. I can request it. So, yeah, I sent a request. Right. Oh, good. I'm in screen sharing now, so I just got to pull up the document again. I'm all set.
All right.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey, folks, how you doing?
How you feeling? Oh,
I just body aches, and it's all right. I had some rest today, so that was good.
I mean, you don't have to join us.
Oh, no. I mean this. I happen to have a document I just wanted to go over with you guys, so I don't want to put it off a week. So I appreciate it, though.
Well, if you'd like, we can move it to the beginning of the agenda. That way you can, that way
No,
go back to bed and rest.
Yeah.
you're too generous. All right, well, I'd be fine, but I'm gonna help out with the presentation as well. So I'll just hang out and take it easy. I'm sitting down. It's no big deal. Thank you, though.
I have no problem doing that. So.
You're so kind. I'm all set. Yeah, I'm gonna take care of it. Thanks.
All right, well, we are all here, so I can call this meeting to order at 7:09 PM.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has everyone had an opportunity to read our minutes from our last meeting, which was on the 19th of November?
Yes.
Yes. Any changes to the minutes or comments?
No.
If not, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the November 19th, 2024 meeting minutes of special school committee meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hello, anyone that might be out there today? Well-
We have Kevin and Maddie Federo are, I believe, are the only ones.
Well, hello, Maddie. Hi, Maddie.
Hi, Maddie.
Hi.
Moving on to correspondence and community input. Has anyone received any community input or correspondence? I have not.
No.
No. Anyone out in the audience? I take it as a no. Okay. Moving on to the examination and authorization for payment of many bills.
Backed up a little bit because of the special meeting. It was a little larger total, 164,887.40. I believe there's anything unusual or out of line on the list. Typical supplies, tuition, sped, power.
Transportation. CBD bus company.
Yeah.
And Patty was referencing, this may not answer your question, but with the National Grid, there's two power ones on there, one for 2,600 and one for 7,398. So I think the bills past due probably swallowed in those two.
Yeah, they're in the
Yes.
73.
And everything else is fairly standard offer.
Well, if it's fairly standard, can I have a motion to approve the bill roll?
Motion to approve the bill roll presented at the December 10th, 2024 meeting in the amount of $164,887.40.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, moving on to the superintendent's report.
Two items, some are related to the handouts, no particular order that the handouts went out. We got our lead and copper report on our water, which in some places causes angst
Yes.
for folks, including something called PFAs in a lot of places, forever chemicals. and you are below the limits of cutoff for both lead and copper, so your water is deemed safe. The actual report is there with the readings. That's the first one. I did distribute, Greg, yours is over here. You have a correspondence from the United States Senate, compliments of Elizabeth Warren, as to all the other board members, which is probably a thanks for your service. I would imagine. Post any kind of other propaganda or anything like that. Preschool screening is scheduled for the 14th of January. We're looking forward to that. You have, as part of this bill roll, just spent $6,000 from one of your revolving funds, money that's left over from the old after-school program you ran for the donations account to purchase the used minibus from the town of Manchester for use for field trips and that sort of thing.
That's fantastic.
We don't have it in hand yet, still waiting for the title, but the check has been cut. I just have to hand deliver it. The van gets lettered, and we'll theoretically have that available for use for field trips around Nahant, as well as the general area. It takes up 14 folks, driven by a regular license, doesn't require a CDL. And the driver themselves, by the law about multifunctional school activity vans, which is what this is, can't be paid. So it's more often an advisor who's already paid for doing freshman basketball, who takes the van and then takes the team, and that saves you the money on the bus if you could get a bus. So I think it's a good expenditure. It's already been checked over by a mechanic who I trust, and hopefully by the new year we'll have it on property.
That's great.
Could that be used to transport kids if we were able to uncover a more affordable after-school
So
option?
we're hoping that the more affordable school option that will retool again, either for this spring or for next fall, as part of one of our reports, would be located here. Because it's quite difficult to pull it off in an alternate location, not only on cost, but also in terms of usage numbers. I think the after-school program belongs in this building. We're just gonna have to figure out a way to make that happen. But there's lots of field trips that can't happen now because you just can't get the transportation for that. So I think this is money well spent for that. I did my second superintendent's lottery visit today in third grade for Gabby Rademacher's class for Holidays Around the World. And it was wonderful experience. We had Los Posados, we had Chinese New Year, we had Hanukkah, all from YouTube videos, and the kids were great. The son was there. It was a wonderful
I'm sure it was.
chance to get out and see the kids in a different way.
That's great.
The greenhouse project, I was raising money for that. We ran into a little bit of a stumbling block because the theory was that you could go to the Community Preservation Committee and be able to get funds from that. And a opinion was received from higher powers in CPC world who said, well, it doesn't qualify because it might be recreation, but it's not the structure. The recreation occurs inside, so it can't pay for the structure. And also, because it's a request from an educational institution, that expenditure ought to come from a school budget and not from the CPC funds. So those are the two opinions. So my dream of matching funds from the CPC to match what I got from the unnamed foundation in Boston has flopped. So I've reduced the scope of the greenhouse a little bit, the size and footprint of it. Went to all polycarbonate walls and roof, which makes it cheaper, reduces the entire cost to about $80,000. went back to the foundation and said, could you consider a 2/3 match instead of a third match? And all they said was, what's your funding plan for the rest of it? So I'm encouraged that we may be able to come up with the differential, still waiting to hear from the garden club, who isn't meeting till after Christmas, who are interested in the project. I wrote to the PTO that want to meet with me right after break as well, and to the Educational Foundation. And hopefully we can pull that together to be able to do a greenhouse on the property. I did distribute the NEC report to you folks from the consortium, SPED consortium. A really good organization. Yesterday, one of the highlights of the year was to receive a voicemail from the head of the Council on Aging in Nahant, Mary Minor, who said, you know, the ship that you like so much, which was down in our office, there was a big USS Constitution down there. When I went to borrow the van to drive the kids over to the Lynn Y, and I just admired it. And she said, well, the guy that donated it, John Lazar, who used to be a counselor here years ago, who unfortunately in downsizing got RIF way back when, still works for the Council on Aging, does the veterans program, must be a former veteran himself.
Yes, he is.
And he was talking with Mary and said, I'll donate it to the school.
Oh.
So that's the ship that sat on the desk during our
And I think it's beautiful.
just beautiful
It is beautiful.
condition. So we'll find a good location for it. It's the USS Constitution, completely decked out. It's really beautiful. You ought to stop by and see it. But that's a donation in kind to the school and to the kids from John. So we'll make sure he gets some public acknowledgement for that. Beyond that, I think that's the extent of my superintendent's report. I was gonna give Kevin's, but Kevin joined us online, so I would pass the baton to you, Kevin, for your report.
Well, Madam Chair, thank you, and Superintendent Lebo, thank you as well. I'm happy to share my report. I wanted to start with a new staff update. As you may recall, Caroline Munnelly resigned to go work in the State House, and we've replaced her with Mary Kate McCarthy. She will be working in the 4th grade, which, as you may recall, we added a paraprofessional to that class because it was larger than typical and it was a bit disrupted when the classes combined at the start of the year. But she's also going to support 2 new students that we have in preschool who have needs that will be, that her skills will be much beneficial. She has experience being an ABA tutor. She worked with autistic students in the preschool age group. She's a senior at Salem State. She's been working for a long time, but she's going to just finish her undergraduate degree rather, and in early childhood education. And so we think she's a perfect match. She already got to meet with Riley, and she'll begin on Monday as a paraprofessional full time. Also, I wanted to just update you on, as we look at the middle of the school year, we have several new staff members that have been just really successful, and you're aware of them all. I've listed them for you on my report. Jose Garcia, he's been fantastic as a custodian. Peter Ton has really jumped in with 2 feet, added so much to the school in terms of making sure that our technology works. And he's very quick to reply. He's very skilled. The best technology support person we've ever had. And so I'm really pleased about that. And just I wanted to let you know that I think our grade 1, grade 5, and grade 6 teachers are doing fabulous in their roles. Lydia Smith moved to grade 1, and she's been wonderful down there with her 15 students. Tessa Deering's doing a nice job with grade 5, and Kayla Harrington with grade 6. So I just simply wanted to let you know that the new hires that we had from the start of the school year, I think are moving along nicely.
Thank you.
I want to let you know that I wrote a grant for from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and they provide art grants. And so we're going to have a program after school on dyeing and weaving with native plants. Diana Brandy has a degree actually in fiber arts. And so she's going to be using the plants that we have on the school grounds to dye fabrics and dye yarns, and then teach weaving classes after school. And so that was an $850 grant, and we were glad to have won that. Our after school program is starting up again. I've been working with Riley Edmonds, our counselor. We have 4 workshops for the first 8-week session. Those will be Lego contraptions, which I'm going to teach with our custodian, Jose Garcia, who has a real lot of skill in, I'll say, hands-on learning and mechanics, I guess you could say. We'll also have a yoga class taught by our occupational therapist. We'll have a creative arts class taught by Heidi Fiore and Lydia Antrim. And we're also going to offer a Spanish class on Tuesdays by Julie Weber. So that's our first session, and I'm happy to be able to have those coming up soon. We'll be getting out sign-ups soon, and then starting, I believe it's the week of January 8th. I've been working with Superintendent Lebo on creating a math curriculum committee. We're eager to review our math curriculum. You might be familiar with Curate, which DESE provides a nice review of current curricula that are out there. So it's a way to really jumpstart. They've done a lot of the legwork in terms of reviewing programs, letting you know what other towns are using, letting you know what Swampscott is using. And so we've made a short list. We're going to make a short list of probably 3 to 4 programs that we're going to sample, review, and hopefully present a recommendation to you at the end of the school year to begin in the fall of 2025. I'll just let you know, everyday math, it's been successful for the school. Our scores are good, but it is not ranked by Massachusetts Department of Elementary Education on the Curate program. Teachers find that it doesn't have quite enough practice. Drill and skill is the short way to call it, but it has a lot of good application. But we like to, and we've been supplementing it with IXL and with teacher worksheets. So we like to move on to something else that has better reviews.
Mr. Andrews, what is Swampscott using?
They use Harcourt's, it's called Into Math, HMC, Into Math. The name doesn't really grab you, but I did look at it, and it is what they call all green. It's not ecology green, it just means they got all green lights on the different areas. So it is highly regarded by DESE. And so, that would be my first look. If it's working there, it certainly could work for us. But I think we should just, as a part of the process, keep it open and let teachers and the educators at the school review what's out there.
Yeah, that sounds like a great process. I think for me, and it's not this may not be the right way to go, but if it did work and teachers thought that it would work and be a better solution for Nahant kids to have the same curriculum as they go into the second half of middle school feels worth including in the consideration. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for that. I agree. We could also partner up for PD, so we'll have a lot of professional development in the fall. And so if Swampscott has new teachers and they want to learn how to use the program that they've already adopted, maybe they're not running new training that happens sometimes at schools, I'd welcome them to join us for the training on how to use HMC into math. An update on Parent Square. We're working to have the PTO be able to have direct access to Parent Square. There is a feature where you can assign room parents to put blasts out. And so, we wanted to roll it out step by step, get familiar with it ourselves, but now we're at a point where we're going to be offering that directly to PTO so they can communicate. And again, that information from in Parent Square is pulled every night right from our School Brains account, our student database, basically. And so if you update your phone on Monday, on Tuesday, you'll get the blast from PTO, from the school, so you're not missing any communication. And so we've been using it successfully, and we'll hopefully have some training for the PTO on how to use it. But it's very user friendly. And Peter Ton is really taking the lead on that, which is wonderful. He's our tech support again. I want to let you know that we were able to get some new seating. I found that the mid-range of the seats for the kids at school were lacking. We have good low seats, we have good high seats, but the middle seats are old, and a lot of students I found were not quite sitting in the right height seat. So I'm working with our occupational therapist, actually two of them, our occupational therapist Julie Driscoll and also Kathy Durland, and they're going to help us fit the kids properly in their seat. And the neat thing about this, I think, is that all the seats are the exact same color, same shape, but different heights. And so it's going to be very ergonomic. And again, Jose is fantastic about adjusting the desks so that we'll get everybody comfortable. And it helps with handwriting, it helps with focus. And so those are all in the hallway. You probably saw them on your way to the meeting.
Yeah.
And the color was butter yellow, but it came out tang orange. But I think it's fabulous nonetheless. I was trying to match the tiles in the floor, and online you can't really quite tell the colors, but um, I think it's fun, and so I'm happy with them. And again, that was from that was funds that had to be spent before the September 30th, and so they made those chairs, and then we shipped them in.
Nice, very nice.
Finally, the after-school program, as Mr. Lebo had alluded to, he and I have been talking about this. What would be the next steps for getting a program together? I think streamlining the options for parents, and then also um, looking at how we can make it affordable, but still meet the goal of hiring people. So it's that cross point in Nahant where you want people to work here for after school, but you also want to make it affordable for parents. And so we're going to look at maybe possibly reducing some of the options, not make it so that you could have 1 day, 4 days, 2 days. I find I've been looking in the industry, and typically it's 2, 3, or 5. Um, Again, YMCA, the option was just 5 days all the way till 6 p.m. I think we're not going to do something like that, but it seems like most after-school programs, have fewer options than we've had in the past, and it'll make it more affordable for everybody, and make the program able to run. So I'm thinking that our next step for this will be me and Mr. Lebo working together on a budget, and then putting it to you folks to see what you thought about, how we could structure it so that it would, so that we could staff it, A, which is the big piece, and then also B, that it would be within the range of what parents could pay.
Thank you so much for thinking about this, Mr. Andrews. It'll really matter to those of us that are kind of struggling to hang through the year.
Yeah, no, we see them outside. We see the kids outside, and the parents that are helping other families, and kind of coming together for this period. But I think that we really do need to figure out something that we can do, and make it, maybe by simplifying it, it might make it both affordable and something we can actually hire people for.
Yeah.
Upcoming dates, Swampscott High School is coming out on Friday. There'll be the band will be performing, and of course that's made up by many of our alumni. We always love seeing the Nahant kids come back and play for their friends and family here at the school. That'll be for the students and staff. The 20th we have our choral concert, and then after the new year we'll have our band concert, and we're looking to have this at Town Hall. Those are upcoming events here, and that concludes my report.
You.
Mr. Andrews, I wanted to
Yeah.
add just one comment, if that's okay. Is that all right? Okay. I think as a parent, Tessa Deering is a breath of fresh air. I was on the hiring committee and did have some like butterflies with so many teachers that are new to their career, coming on at one time. And it feels like they've gotten a lot of good support, from teachers that are here, like Britt Racine and others, that are really supporting them. But Tessa, our parent teacher conference was great, and just the materials that I'm seeing coming out of the class as like an educator and a parent, I think she's doing a really incredible job getting kids ready for the diverse and complicated world that we're going into. Like, she's very balanced. She brings all the information forward and helps kids process it. And what Galileo comes up with is really, it's deep and it's good. And I just really, I really appreciate what she's doing in that class, so I want to give a shout out for her.
Great, thank you. I'd be happy to share that with her.
Yes.
And I concur. To you, Madam Chair.
Okay, next on the list is personnel updates, but I think we covered that, did we not? Yeah.
Then Kevin's report, which was sort of springboarding off of the committee. That committee that we're going to unveil is a offshoot of the new teacher's contract. Front loaded, starting that committee right off the bat. Remember, we had a curriculum and professional development committee, 2 administrators on it, Mr. Andrews and myself, and 2 newly appointed by the NTA teachers this afternoon at their meeting. 1 for grade 3-6, 1 for grade K3. The 3-6 person is Kayla Harrington, and the K3 person is going to be Gabby Rademacher.
Nice.
So the 4 of us will be the ones that start off with the test balloon of the math program and deciding, where to head with that. But it's the spirit of teacher input into the process as well. And since that's time sensitive and just happened today, I thought it was important to add that on.
Thank you. Great. Next on the list is disposal of surplus property.
I will turn it over to Mr. Andrews. You have a handout which includes some photos of the items that he will discuss with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item you'll see is a wheelchair lift. And this was likely purchased by the school when the renovation was being done. Then there was a staircase that used to be behind the stage that was converted to a ramp. And so the students that would be in a wheelchair would access the stage just by going in the back and not having to come in the front of the stage and getting on a lift and then coming onto the stage. We've never used it, although we haven't had a student who was in a wheelchair daily. However, if we did have a student in a wheelchair daily, I wouldn't imagine that we would use that piece of equipment to get them onto the stage. I think it would be, more of a spectacle than just having them come in the back on the ramp. And that's how most kids get on the stage anyway, is just coming in the back door of the ramp and getting onto the stage. So we're offering that. We want to offer that as surplus. We've got to find the keys first because it is operated by 3 different keys. And so we have never used it. So we're looking for those. And we're also going, if it is approved for surplus tonight, I will offer it to the town if they could use it at town hall, perhaps. It is big. It has a footprint of about 6 by 6 feet. And we'd like to use that space for something else, or maybe nothing at all, just to clear up the halls. We've been working on throughout the building, just continuing to move things along that are no longer needed. So that's item 1. Item 2 is a collection of keyboards. And Mr. Bullock, of course, has been careful in going over these keyboards. We haven't used them in the 9 years I've been at the school. And he's busy with band, and he does use some marimba type of instruments to teach notes. They also take up quite a bit of space and are not high quality, although they look nice. They don't have the weights of a piano, if you're familiar. So we have a great electric keyboard that we purchased, and we'd like to offer these for surplus. And then the last item is a couple of smart boards that are probably about 15 years old and are mostly non-functional. And so, but on the erring on the side of caution, we thought we should offer them as surplus, although I'm not sure if they have any value. So with that, I would like to ask someone to make a motion, unless there's questions, of course, to offer these items as surplus.
I have a motion.
Motion. Do you have any, would you like to do it?
No, go ahead.
Do you have any questions?
How to do the motion?
Oh, I was motion to offer an indoor lift, 9 keyboards, electronic keyboards, and 2 smart boards for surplus sale.
Second,
All in favor?
So good at that part.
Aye.
Very good there.
Excellent. So moving on to, do we have any old business at this point in time to discuss?
Yeah.
Okay, we can move on to new business.
October 1st enrollment report, remember we had a beginning of that with the K-6 report earlier in the fall. And we were still waiting for, well, where are the high school kids and where are all the middle school kids going once they're beyond 6th grade? So that has been fully flushed out. I did email it out and there's a copy there for you. And on the left-hand side, it lists all the various schools that our kids attend, including the school in Nahant and the schools in Swampscott by grade and the number of kids in each grade. So Swampscott Schools has 97 Nahant resident children. There are 6 in grade 7, there are 20 in grade 8, 26 in grade 9, 18 in grade 10, 10 in grade 11, and 17 in grade 12. And then you just follow down through, there are less kids, obviously, in various, in this case, 7 through 12th grade situations, including Essex Tech is listed there for the vocational school. Presently 1 9th grader, 4 10th graders, 1 11th grader, 5 12th graders, for a total of 11. And be interesting to see how many 8th graders are looking at the tech, because that does have some budget implications with 5 graduating, only 1 in the 9th. The pack may be reduced, even though it's not a direct relationship to what your costs are, because it's how your enrollment relates to everybody else's combined enrollment is how they figure the percentage through the formula for what your share of their budget is. Plus, we have no idea what their budget increase would be. But with that many kids graduating and only 1 9th grader, if we continued with 1 or 2, possibly there could be a even or reduced assessment from the tech, because it's based on a years before enrollment is the way it works. It also shows the number of kids pre-K to 6 that are in Nahant, that's 127. And then it shows where in the various pre-K through grade 6, other locations, Tower School has 10 total pre-K to 6 kids scattered between the grades, 1 student per grade, basically, except grade 5 that has 2. St. Pius has 1 child, East Boston Catholic has 2. I'm not sure what OLA is, to be honest with
Our
you,
Lady
has 1.
Academy.
Marblehead Charter has 4 6th graders, 4 5th graders, 1 4th grader, 1 3rd grader. St. Mary's has 1, and I assume that's North Shore Christian School has 1. And again, that's a total of 163 are in Nahant. Total Nahant school age population is 317, pre-K to grade 12.
May I ask a question regarding Marblehead Charter School?
Yep.
I see there's 1 student there in 3rd grade. Did they change their policy from starting in 4th grade?
I'm not sure the answer to that
Not
question.
that I know of. Yeah, so that seems like it might be an error. That
But
jumped
that's
out at
what-
me too.
I
Because
mean, that could be an entry error in what I was given.
Mhm.
I'd have to check on that.
Okay, I was just
But
curious
This
because.
is a required, not in this format, required report to DESI
Mhm.
of what your October 1st enrollment is, because that drives your subsidies and that sort of thing.
Understood. It was just unusual to see a 3rd grade.
Yeah,
Check
and that,
off.
I'll find out about that and let you know if there's some reason why.
What jumps out to me looking at this is Marblehead Charter, grades 5 and 6, 4 and 4, enrolled 8 children. And I'm
Mhm.
really curious as to what's going on there.
Or here.
So if there's any way we could get some more info, I think it'd be really helpful.
Is that unique to this year?
I don't know.
You know, I'd like to see it, it's been like that for many years.
Well,
Because if it
the,
was something that happened 3 years ago, then maybe whatever the issue was has been corrected, but it's hard to tell.
It's been off and on. One year, the school, we used to have 2 grade classes per grade level, and in one year, so many kids went to Marblehead Charter in 4th grade that's when we started having 1 class per grade level. And it was pretty consistent. So,
But I guess you said that you normally can't start there until 4th grade.
until 4th grade.
it's a 4th grade. My concern is that in the I can't speak to earlier, there was like 2 kids left in the middle of the 4th grade year last year, plus 2 others that I think left at the beginning. And then the number that have left, over the summer at the beginning of this year to go to the school. Another student who resides in Swampscott and in Nahant opted to leave us and go to 5th grade in Swampscott when it started, and there were lots of different reasons for that, including being able to start the middle school in 5th grade. But that child had come up through kindergarten here in Nahant. And we know these families, so like it is really that, they're still Nahant residents. And so, and my son in 5th grade hangs out with, the kids that went to the charter school. And so I think I have wondered, I'm glad this came up, because I think it would be worth for us to kind of see what the draw is currently with these 8 families, right? Because from what I'm hearing, just not, as a parent, as an educator, I don't think there's anything happening there that we couldn't try to work on here, if that's of benefit to the families. I mean, it's not magic dust, and I think it would be worth us learning what's the draw right now, so that we might be able to make some assessments about whether or not we could, do some of the things. We may not want to, but we could consider it if we had more information. And I wondered what you both thought about that.
I'd defer to Kevin initially, just since he's been here a little longer.
Yes, I'd be happy to speak on it. So one thing that we have tried is offering an enrichment class, excuse me, offering enrichments after school. That's one thing that I know the charter has that we don't have every day. So students at the charter school stay till 3:15, and teachers all have either a workshop class or extra help or Lego club until 3:15. And that's each day without a charge to families. So I would think that would be a big benefit. And then outside of that, I'd be happy to. I have a departing student survey that I send out, and I could use that to reach out to the families that are currently at the charter. I know that 2 of them in the 4th and 5th grade are going to be leaving the charter actually after being there for just a few months. And so, I'm not sure what that says, but that's another data point to think about.
Sure, and the expectation is that those students would come back here.
No, the charter is saying that they can't meet their needs, although they were successful at the school.
So where will they go next? We don't know.
To be determined.
Okay,
I wish they would be. I wish that the state would have them come back here first,
Yes.
and see if we could be successful as they were successful and they were here. But it sounds like we're working with the attorneys on this to determine, what can be done, because it's not the first time that it's happened that a student's left, gone to the charter, and then
Yep.
gone to an outside placement that was expensive.
which is probably another reason that we should kind of hang on to our kids so we don't get involved in that cycle.
There's also another piece to it. I'm not sure if they still do a lottery system.
Yeah, they have to by law.
Okay, so they do the lottery system,
Mhm.
but once you get your first child in.
Yes, it's simply
That
preference.
might be bringing that
Mhm.
other family member in there.
Well, thank you. This is helpful. Right, kind of really draws your eye to, ooh, what's happening in grades 5,
Right.
6.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the more we can learn, the better.
One more point I'd like to say, if I may, Madam Chair, is that it could be that they are going to the charter and then they're going back to Swampscott where their rest of Nahanters will be.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's maybe why the numbers go down in 6th grade, 7th grade, or wherever it is.
Mhm.
We'll see. I'll send the survey out and I'll get back to you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay. First draft of school budget.
Okay, Mr. Andrews, I sent you a copy of the PowerPoint as well. So that's the budget itself, but I also emailed you while you were doing your report, the actual PowerPoint, a little easier to follow initially. You can find it. That's this packet right here. And I mirrored this after what I saw in your previous superintendent.
Oh,
present.
this looks very familiar.
Changed the
That's why I'm
color
like,
is all I
I
did.
know this
Use the
format.
same format, because I know it ends up with the finance committee, and I
That's what
watched
they
one of
used to
those last
see.
spring. And they were glowing in their accolades for the presentations. I said, well, we'll just use the same template then. So it's, the change is, my name is on there, and the date for the public meeting is here on on February 11th, so that's built into this. But otherwise than that, this is the way that presentation would look, and it's a little simple. Well, the first page of it lists out present sitting non-school committee members. And then the third page starts to launch into a 30,000-foot look at what are the major changes in the budget and why. And then the Excel sheet you have goes into the detail, which we can refer to in a little while. But there are three major areas of your budget. There's the Johnson School section. There's the district section that includes school committee, and it includes the superintendent's office, and it includes special ed tuitions. And then there's the town, which has Essex Tech in it and special ed transportation. So if you look at those three areas, the Johnson Schools section is up 27,877, which is not a huge number. The district section is up 153,000, and the town section is up basically 105,000. The factors that are in there, which add up to be an increase of 286,039 proposed in the upper left-hand corner. Put it in perspective, last year your approved budget and the year before teetered around $190,000 increase, was in the 4% range both years. Year before was a little less. This is 6%. And the drivers are in the district line and the town line. And the factors that are causing those significant increases are for special ed tuition and transportation, due mostly to a change in some of the placements and additional placements. You had, to start the year, 9 students in out-of-district placements, and now you have 12, 11, potentially 12 who are in out-of-district placements. And each of those are fairly costly amounts and unplanned for, therefore they weren't budgeted for, so they have an effect on this year's budget and the proposed budget, because one has to assume that they're still going to be in those placements next year. So you have an increase in placements, you have a change in placement, and I have to be very careful not to go into any real specifics, but a fairly costly change, not only for the tuition, but also for the transportation because of the location. And then salary increases are the collective bargaining agreement for next year for Unit A. Teachers is 3.25. Unit B has just started. So we don't know exactly where that will land, but we should have a pretty good idea in January, early February of where we're at with that, because negotiations have started. There was one less teacher in this pack, because remember, we had a second, fourth grade teacher who early in the school year decided to leave the state and go pursue another vocation that she was interested in doing. The position was not filled. It doesn't look like we will need to fill it next year either. But we did have to add a para for that, a ESP for that. So you had a reduction in the salary for the teacher, one less teacher, and the para costs. The school counselor, there's an increase in there because the counselor had been funded a large portion through grant money, through the ESSER funds. He was full-time, she's still full-time. My opinion, and I think Kevin shares that, is needs to be full-time. But you have to absorb the loss of the grant funding that is no longer there. So there's an increase to keep your counselor at 1.0 full-time equivalent. Not an increase in services, but it's an increase in cost. Swampscott tuition, we have a contract,
She is.
but it's set to go up 2.5% a year. So the increases in the budget include that. We're speculating that Essex North Shore for this version of the budget would be an increase of 3%. Don't know where that will land. Depends on our enrollment and also depends on their costs. You did not have your occupational therapist return last year. A new one was hired, and it was a considerable cost increase to bring the new person on board. So those are the major factors that drive the increase of 286,039 in the budget. Significant impacts to the budget again on the next page. Increased cost for occupational therapists. It's a $22,000 increase. That is 7.7% of the total increase. Increased cost for the additional ESP, 18,000. That's 6.8% of the total increase. Swampscott tuition increase is 42,741. That's rounded off 15% of the increase. And then out of district tuitions and transportations combined is an increase of 202,000. It's 70% of the total increase. Then you have to look at the asterisk, because that includes us applying $130,000 of circuit breaker money to reduce what you would have to ask for tuition and transportation if you didn't apply the circuit breaker. Circuit breaker in a sort of nutshell is if you have high cost out of district placements and they're over what's called a foundation, which is in the high $40,000 range. And also for some of the transportation, that if you're above that number, you have to pay up to that 50-some thousand, just because that's your responsibility as a town. But if you happen to have a $200,000 placement, the difference between foundation and that 200,000, if the state has money, will be reimbursed a year later at approximately 75% of the tuition and maybe 40-ish% of the transportation. So you don't pay the entire 200, but a year later, you'll get 40, 50,000 sometimes back on a high cost placement. So you had a balance to start the school year of 65,000 in your circuit breaker. From last year's out of district placements, you have coming in this year 150,000. And then the higher placements this year generate next year around 200. So that all put together is a pot of money that the 65 has to be spent, because you can't keep it around more than 200. The 150-ish has to be spent next year, and the amount you're going to generate from this year's for next year has to be spent either next year or the year after. So it's a little complicated, but we've applied for this version, 130,000 of the circuit breaker balance to reduce the amount we have to ask the town for. And I think that's a safe number right now, but again, it's early in the process, it's early in the year. It's still a higher number than last year by 90-some thousand dollars in terms of the request. It's a 6% instead of a 4%. And then the impact of those items, just those 4 items above, is 6.03, 286,526 of the total increase of 286,039. So you say, well, how's that happen? Because if you look at your Excel sheet, there's a bunch of red lines on there that show reduction in different lines. So the bottom line, I think, is the rightful deserved placements for children with special needs have become quite expensive, especially with the number, and the transportation especially is skyrocketing for those children. And those kids deserve to be where they're at, but it costs a lot of money for that to occur. Last year, you went with a initial budget of like 490 something. The beginning of the year, it looked like you'd be $4,000 or $5,000 in the hole. Now it looks like you'll be, it's on the sheet, we'll get to it, close to 200,000 in the hole. So that has to be absorbed this year somehow, planned for next year. And this is all about the planned for part. Okay, so that's the reality of the budget.
But it's easy to understand.
And the next page is on the Johnson Elementary School budget change. So that first section of the budget, the things that affect that, there's an update for collective bargaining, as we talked about, of 3.25 for unit A, unit B to be determined. Reduce 1 5th grade teacher, add the ESP, school counselor cost was funded by the ESSER grant. You'll then have 2 sections of 2nd grade, where you have 2 of first now, and 1 section, hopefully, of kindergarten. 1, 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Net teacher staff change is -1, and that's that effect of the $27,000 increase. District budget change, next page. Tuition, we've already talked a little bit about these numbers, plus 42,000, 14.9% of the total increase. For tuition, superintendent's office, 4,000, that's 1.4. School committee is 1986.7 of the total budget increase. And then out of district tuition is 104,000, but that's with 65 of circuit breaker, half of the 130 applied to it. But it's still 104,000 increase in the tuition line in the budget. And that's 36.5% of the total increase. And again, total district change, 153,353. That is 54% of that total increase of the 286. Town changes, out of district transportation, plus 97,000, and that's with 65 of the circuit breaker applied to it. So it's really the 97 plus the 65. General ed transportation, that's locked in. You don't have an increase in that. Essex tuition, that 7693 is based on the 3%. And again, we don't know exactly what that will be. Total town change, 105,000, 37% of the total budget increase. And then it's shown in table format, what we just talked about. Johnson School, 1.5% of the total. District is 6.5. Town is 19.2. Total education cost plus 286,039, 6.03% increase. And then the last table sort of does the same thing, but compares to other years. As you can see in 23, from 22 to 23, FY 23 change was, that's 22, 23. Your increase was 111,000, 2.6%. And then you were 194, 4.5, and then you were 190, 4.2. And this year, the proposed is 286,039, the 6.03. So it gives you a little look at history in terms of that. And then a thank you and comments and questions for budget hearings. The Excel sheet, which Mr. Andrews does have for anyone online to be able to see. We're just going to talk about a couple things. That's that Excel sheet.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get into that now.
Yeah, I not sure who else is on. I know Maddie was on, and that maybe one other person on there, but I could always send it to Maddie as well. You can have it. But if you could get it up on the screen real quick, that'd be helpful.
Sure, certainly. Let's see.
The way this is organized, that second column from the left, those are the categories. So it starts off with school committee, audit services, legal, general supplies, dues and memberships, etc. And there's several pages that flow like that. Just to the left of that shows you what the FY 24 last year, I'm just showing you those numbers, what was budgeted in each of those categories last year. So for example, audit services was 4264. This year's budget you're presently in, you had budgeted 4435. We're projecting, next column over, end of the year to be 4435. Ahead or behind? Even. It's a guess. Difference between 24 to 25, $171. It was a 4% increase to that amount of money for the budget. Next year's proposed is to the right, 4445, 35, excuse me, including the exact same number, no difference, no percentage change. And then the budget flows like that, line by line by line. The ones I want to emphasize are highlighted. The ones in the blue, those come from one of the tabs on your Excel sheet that was from negotiations. They actually pull the salaries right out of the actual negotiations we did. That's why those are highlighted. The yellow are important things to look at, not only for this year, but next year. For example, the first highlighted in yellow is special education aids. This year, in the center of the Excel sheet, you had budgeted for sped aids 95 or basically 96,000. You're going to spend 107,000. That's a deficit of around 11,000 in that one line. The other aid is also one of your ESPs, and you're going to be $2,000 overdrawn there. So in those two lines, it's a $12,000 deficit. And then next year, got to assume you've got the same pack of ESPs, project it to next year with a guesstimate on what percentage might increase would be. And you see that those two lines generate almost $19,000 increase to the budget, just in those two lines. Okay, now that plays off of the blue line above, just below FY 24, about 2/3 the way down the page. General full-time employees. You'll notice that this year, actually I want to go to the one right in the center. Salaries regular full-time. Notice that that shows for the right line here, Mr. Legal. I was in the right place. You go to rate to regular full-time employees. You'll see a header behind under regular full-time employees, $84,000 ahead. That's because your fourth grade teacher left And you won't have to pay that out. So you have a balance in that line this year. But you hired an ESP. And that's why those are negative. The two effects of that keep you in the positive. Because ESP is less expensive than the teacher. So bad news in one line, good news in another line financially, the net wash is you're ahead. Okay, that makes sense?
Mhm.
All right. And then you go to the next page. I want to highlight the one that's a third of the way down, guidance. That's the effect of moving your counselor from partially funded by the ESSER grant to full-time funded by the school budget. There's no effect this year, but next year you'll notice in FY 26, it's an $18,000 effect to the budget to move her to full-time because ESSER won't pay a part of that $18,000 increase. Okay, that's what that is. Occupational therapist is basically in the middle of the page. You had budgeted 35,640. The individual who you hired, and pretty much it's a market that you don't have large number of applicants for that. You're paying 56,000 for that individual. That's a $20,000 deficit in this year's budget. Project it to next year with a salary increase, that would be a $22,000 increase for next year's budget. So that's one of those big drivers that I have listed. And then on the next page, sort of where you get to the heart of it, as we talked about, first highlighted section, tuition private schools. You see this year's effect. You had budgeted 492,406 in the middle of the Excel sheet. You're projected to spend 600,261. That's a deficit of over $100,000. Next year, project an increase to those same existing placements. This spreadsheet shows 662,994 for tuition. Now I'll be applying 65 of the circuit breaker to that number in a final version. So that number will downsize by the 65,000. Same thing with transportation. This year you had budgeted $110,000. You're going to spend $235,000. $124,000 deficit in this year's transportation. Inflated to next year, what it would cost, 272,761, an increase of 162,000. Apply 65 circuit breaker to it, takes it down to that total sped tuition and transportation increase of over 200,000. So those are the two large drivers in what our increase is. And then at the bottom of the sheet, right along the center line, you'll see a section that says circuit breaker available. That's just a record of what the amounts are in circuit breaker. Balance must spend in 24-25 this year, 65,678. New from 23-24 placements last year's 157,810. Projected for next year, 209,741. It's over 400,000 in circuit breaker when it's completely accounted for. So that's helpful, but we're going to take from the 65 balance. Notice in the center of 25, it says right now our budget would end the year at negative 81,381. We've got to apply that 65 of circuit breaker to that deficit. Going to take that deficit this year to get us back to close to whole for this year because we can't run a negative budget. And then next year, we're going to take 130 from the 157 and the incoming 209 and apply it to the budget to reduce the effect of the increase in tuition and transportation.
Mhm.
That makes sense. I think it's a safe gamble. We're not in an economic situation where they're going to not fund circuit breaker,
Mhm.
but we're taking a little bit of a risk on money we don't have in hand. We have 65 in hand we gotta spend this year. We have 157 coming in across this year, guaranteed money. The 209 is a calculation.
Yeah.
So I called your former superintendent and said, Tony, what'd you do with circuit breaker? Don't ever apply next year's amount to a budget. Well, I'm not sure I'm gonna have any choice, Tony. I think we're safe because gotta spend the 65. The 150 has to be spent next year, no matter what.
Mhm.
And then it's a safe bet that we'll have an incoming stream of money of some amount that relates to that 209 next year. It will have at least the 130 that get us through the presentation of this budget.
Yeah.
But you're still presenting a budget that is 98,000 more than last year.
Mhm.
6% instead of 4%.
Mhm.
But I think it's justifiable. There were no bells and whistles in here. The student improvement plan and my sort of incoming goals were to add a math and ELL specialist to the school. That's not included in this. Adding a new math program, we're gonna have to find a way to do that throughout the lines that we presently have. But you won't be able to move the school forward in an area like support for non-special ed kids that need outside help in math and ELL, which many schools have math and language interventionists. And you don't have that. It all falls upon the classroom teacher to pull that all off. So it's not ideal, but it's being driven by the reality of the cost that we have. The only other section I wanted to show you is on the very last page. On the left-hand section, those are the balances that are in outside accounts, sometimes called revolving accounts.
Yeah.
Preschool had, when I wrote this sheet, $224,740 in it. Now that pays for the teachers, it pays for the ESPs, but it's carrying a considerable balance. What Tony used to do and Chris would be apply some of that balance to some of the lines for this year that are appropriate for preschool to share. Supplies, electricity, and that kind of stuff. That isn't done yet. But there may still be an amount of money that we can appropriately apply to lines that can make sure we're not in trouble this year, but also maybe defray that balance and lower it for the ask for next year. After school, which is your old after school program, has $63,000 in it. It's left over from when you ran the program. And when I met with Tony, he said, well, that's yours. You can sort of do with it what you choose to do. Well, I think it should relate to what it was for in some way. But when times are tough, it was raised through fees from when you ran your own program, and a balance remains. So I think it's fair to possibly apply some of that, depending on the lay of the land when we get a little further in the budget process. And we hear a little more about other departments and reaction to finance committees and select boards and that kind of stuff in terms of the increase that we're asking. Donations account, 71,438 sits in that account. And no one seems to know if it was dedicated donations, like I give you 5,000 to use for buying a flagpole.
So they don't know if it's restricted or not?
I have not been able to find anyone who can tell me what is the record for those amounts. I think it's accumulated over time. And there have been donations, but they're not specific donations for specific purposes.
That's
Superintendent Lebo and Madam Chair, I'd like to weigh in on that a little bit. if I may. That was, I believe, largely from Northeast University to cover music in art classes.
And we continue to get the 25 from Northeastern, but we even got that. I would assume that flows into that line because it doesn't go into the budget anywhere else.
Right. Exactly. It's donations. Yeah.
And
25,000 a year.
that I can find that say you can only use it for A or B, which I wasn't able to get from the town accountant, wasn't able to get it from your previous superintendent. Perhaps Kevin has something that says that money is for exactly that, but what it's then gonna reduce is the ability for us to use it as a buffer for some of the overage.
Sorry if I wasn't clear. It's not restricted. It's not restricted, but when it first came out years ago, 20 years ago, that's what it was mentioned for. But it's not restricted. You're right.
So the funds are not in this account, are not restricted in any way.
Yeah,
Right.
I've not been able to find anyone who can say, you can spend all of it, but 12,000, because that's reserved for a frog pond or something like that. And because the person who donated that, may or may not be alive anymore, and its purpose why it was donated should be there. There is no record that I can find of exact. I would be careful with that 71, I think.
Yes.
The after-school program balance was generated to use for kids, and we may need some of it to use for our own after-school program.
That was gonna
defray
be my
some of those
question.
costs.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure I would go and have my eyes on all of it.
So the
For other
after-school
purposes.
program is earned income, right? So there's no restriction on that. You can use that for general operations. It's anyone that donates money that's restricted for a specific purpose that you can't use other than for
And
that.
then you
But I
have
guess
one
my
called
point was,
rents.
we're talking about trying to get the after-school program going again,
Right.
and we
Right.
have this.
In other words,
$62,000.
I'm totally on
sitting there.
board with
Yeah,
you,
that we
Greg,
can-
is that,
Shouldn't it go towards that if that's a goal of the school
Right.
committee and been a big issue,
Oh, yeah.
So that was all I didn't realize that there was
now, a small percentage of
$63,000.
it, we may want to use depending on what we hear and what our reality is before we cut other budget lines to the bone where they start to really affect what's happening in the classroom.
Yeah.
But those balances have sat there, they total, just those lines, $375,000 are sitting in those lines and haven't been used. And, we may need to use some of that balance, but also keep it for the purposes of which it was intended. It's a delicate exercise, but I think you're gonna need to use part of that, because it's also hard to justify just sort of, lack of a better term, sitting on those funds. I mean, those
Yes,
funds
right.
just sit there.
Yes, of course. Agreed.
But
We
even
did buy
like
a
the
minibus
donations connect,
With one of those lines, I can't remember whether she took it from donations or after school. I basically said either one probably, and I think my last statement to her was take it from the donations one. Because that way, it's used for kids and benefits kids in multiple ways, and the 6 isn't out of one of those lines yet, but that's where it's coming from. It's not coming from a budget line, it's coming from a revolving line. And I wanted to have you know what those lines are. And at least be aware that they're sitting there. I even had one teacher ask about those accounts and didn't know they existed, and I said, yeah, it's public knowledge, there's printouts that come all the time, but it's not presented at town meeting. There's nothing that says, oh, in the following revolving accounts, it may be buried in the town report somewhere, that those lines exist. And even your previous superintendent sort of took me down through it and said, well, this one here, this is yours, this is yours, this is yours. Not for me to, just do whatever I wanted with it, but available funding. And then circuit breaker obviously is something totally different. You don't have a lot of grants. You don't get a lot of money through grants through the federal and state government. Your grants are small. You already use your entire SPED grant to fund your SPED director, your team chair, and something else is out of it, Kevin. I'm not sure what else, but basically that entire grant is paying salaries right now. You have ESPs that are paid out of grants. You have very little free cash available to do projects with. It's an extremely tight budget. And then to go from what your profile was for those two lines, tuition and transportations, is what really locks this budget down pretty hard. And will next year, locks it down this year and will lock it down next year. I sent out a memo to teachers early November that just said, hello, everyone, I'm running to let you know that our expenditures for out-of-district tuitions and transportations are running considerably over the amount that was established in the 24-25 budget for these costs for a number of children who need and deserve these important services, and the school year is only about a third completed. In addition, there are very well may be more unknown costs that develop in these cost centers. These overages were unanticipated when the budget was built last year and are due to several new placements to fit the needs of children involved and the resulting change in associated transportations. On the sheet I sent you, you have a tab next to the budget that says circuit breaker. If you go to that, there's no student names in there, but it lists student 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The placement, what the cost is, and the summer costs. You quite often have summer program costs and summer transportation for each of those situations. So it shows you a band that is what we thought this year was going to be, what this year's reality is, what next year's prediction is, and then it calculates the circuit breaker. So if you are an Excel person, you look at that second tab, it'll take you all the way through that. And then the bottom part, I said, given this budget situation, I'm asking everyone to be very cautious with your spending and focus on making essential purchases only. It is my wish to avoid implementing a spending freeze at a later date in the school year, if at all possible. We will need your understanding and cooperation going forward in order to avoid this action from having to be taken. It is possible that expending in other areas may reduce our situation. But I had to sort of like caution people that we were on notice that we had some high costs for this year would also generate the next year. So that was sent out 3 or 4 weeks ago. So that's the first blush of the budget. You can dig into it more in detail on the Excel sheet. Anything that's in red is a reduction, not huge reductions, but instead of 4,000, it's 3,500. Instead of 2,800, it's 2,500. Try to smooth out as much as I could without cutting too close to the bone that starts to affect kids. And then once you've done that, it's a hill you can't climb back up. So there's a little bit of an exercise that you can reduce, but you can't go whole scale with it unless you have a emergency situation, and then you have to do that. Having built a lot of budgets over the years, you've got to allow yourself to regain composure after a challenge. And include things like adding the math and ELL specialists. That has to wait, I think. Now it's your call. I work for you folks. You can say, put it in there. If we put it in, it's probably a $65,000 item. In terms of the cost for that added individual. And we can run to option A and option B. An option A with it in, an option B.
You know,
without.
yeah, it's the accountant in me. I would like to run both scenarios.
I can do that.
Same.
And again, it's no guarantee it would be 65. Usually it's not a brand new teacher, it's someone with some experience
No.
who's maybe getting out of the regular classroom, who's now wants to become a specialist.
Yeah.
And those folks tend to be 4 or 5 steps up the scale anyway. And when you do that, you're gonna be in 60-ish plus or minus $1,000. But nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Correct. If
You put it on the table
if you
as,
never ask
we
for
could
it,
do
you'll
this
never
if we
get
had
it.
option B. And the powers that be above, I mean, obviously there's fire departments and police departments
Yes,
and
I know.
town offices that have to all work within a given allotment of funds that don't swell every year. In the town of Nahant, you don't have businesses, you have all comes off of your tax rolls, property tax rolls. And without a override, you're limited to no more than a 2.5% increase.
Mhm.
So therefore, there is so much money available and everyone buys for it. So a little bit like Hunger Games. I'm sure sitting in a fire department or a police department, there's X, Y, and Z that folks are interested in. And selectmen oversee that and finance committees oversee that. And we advocate for the kids in our charge. So I'm more than willing to run an option A and option B as long as it can survive. And do that. And what I would do is I put in the math interventionist, math ELL interventionist, because I think you can do a combined one. Have one staff member who would work with non-special ed kids and be able to work with them in classrooms as well as pull out. And keep them from getting behind in very important subject areas. So
It's a need.
that's a little long-winded, but that's the first draft of the book.
Well, thank you. I know how much work goes into a budget, so I really appreciate the time you've put into this.
A lot of time on it.
Yes,
It's super important.
Yes, it is.
And it spins off of negotiations. You know, you have to keep it in mind of where you're at. Treat your personnel as well as you can and also make sure you advocate for the kids. And then you have the unknowns that you have no control over. The special ed costs are mandatory expenses, deserved expenses, and have to be funded. Sort of, it's the reality of how you come out of it,
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
very-
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm going to excuse myself at this time.
Oh, of course, we were actually about to adjourn.
Oh, I don't have an agenda in front of me. I'll wait then.
So if anyone doesn't have anything else to add, I'd like a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn at 8:29 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, thank you. I hope you feel better, Kevin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Patty. Appreciate it. Good to see everybody online.
Time you need.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Pass it to the session. Get a second.
Getting sick, the little ones.
Completely is.
Yes.
Little ones, other teachers, you know, parents struggling through something, just a little.
No, what did